So yeah, for the purpose of this panel talk, obviously the theme of the evening is content marketing, and I'll be your moderator for just a few questions, just to kind of kick it off, because we want to make this interactive. So hopefully you've got some questions for our esteemed panel guests afterwards. But let's do, I guess, first of all, a round of introductions, and we'll start with, well, you did introduce yourself at the beginning, John, but so a very quick one.
Okay, I'm John Collins. I'm the managing editor here at Intercom, and obviously content's been a big thing for us. I look after our blog, which gets quite a lot of traffic.
How much?
Hundreds of thousands of people every month. Our podcast, which is kind of a new initiative for us, and books as well, which is another big thing for us. And my background is I worked in print and dead trees and all that kind of stuff for, a long time, and made the transition about a year and a half ago to software. So.
Thank you.
How you doing? Des Martin. I head up the growth team at Qualtrics. I might just take a step back, and growth is one of these words that had a lot of impact, and then marketing people got their hands on it, and it started to get a little bit diluted, unfortunately. What growth means in the Qualtrics context is I sit over a combination of marketing, demand generation, and actually the sales, the opportunity development. So I actually own a number. So I own a kind of a certain amount of pipeline generated each quarter. So it's a way we find of making sure that all the spend we're putting into content and to marketing is actually directly attributable to something, so making it measurable. Yeah, so that's a little bit about, I suppose, Qualtrics. On the content side, I've been in the chair as head of growth for Qualtrics EMEA for about 9 months, and we're still getting the content machinery up and running. We're doing a refresh on elements of our site and things that we're doing. And one of the things that we're really focused on from a content point of view is really using data, similar to what the guys at Newswhip have been doing, to really bring forward really new and fresh insights. And we're very lucky that we have a platform that enables us to survey people right around the world and gather really, really good, fresh insights. So it's quite a powerful tool to have. But just to kind of maybe take a step back and give an insight into, and maybe play the other foot on the whole content side of things. Qualtrics is in the unicorn club, which is, again, another kind of mangled and overused word. But Qualtrics got to be $1 billion valued company without doing any content, without putting any content out. It's a SaaS company that's had a huge success and huge growth trajectory, and they just bypass content completely. So I think it's important that people actually ask the question, what are we trying to achieve? Content can amplify it. Content can be a really important part of it. And I think it's become a very important area for getting an edge, not for doing Me Too, but for maybe getting an edge. But it's definitely not for everybody. That would be my kind of extended intro.
Hey, I'm Ed. I run the content at a small company in Berlin called ChartMogul. ChartMogul is a SaaS analytics platform. So we give analytics that are specific for subscription and SaaS businesses. For us, we're definitely not a $1 billion company yet, but content is a really big part of our marketing strategy. It's the biggest part of our marketing strategy. I run our blog. We do things. We run a lot of experiments with our content. I think we've been very successful with some parts of it. Definitely some parts less. But I guess my background is actually in product and engineering. So I feel like I have a slightly different perspective. I've only been doing this whole content game for about a year now, and I came into it and was kind of overwhelmed with the amount of people that are shouting very loud in this space. So for me, the problem of tackling, how do we have a voice and how do we stand out amongst this sea of people is something that's quite interesting to me. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Ed, and also thanks for flying over from Berlin for this. So we'll just kick off with the first question. So it's, why, in your opinion, is it important for SaaS businesses to implement a content marketing strategy early on? And obviously, Des, you probably said it's not important. So let's not ask Des. And but yeah, Ed, you've got the mic.
Yeah.
Why not?
So for us, I think it was important for a few reasons. Partly because as a small startup with a limited amount of funding, I think it's a very useful way to project your presence in a much bigger way on the web. So it's a way to be seen as a much bigger entity than you are. So you can, as a one-man content team, have still a reasonably large presence on the web, and you can get your name out there in much more cost-effective ways than other channels might have. So I think the other thing is you can achieve a much better ROI than other channels. And again, for a company with reasonably limited budget, investing in content is a good way to really gain some traction and appearance in the market before you can really start spending in other channels. I think as well it takes a bit of time to really spin up the content machine. You need to find your groove and find where you can add value. I think it's very easy to obviously go in the same direction as everybody else, but certainly for me it's taken some time to kind of step back a bit and say, okay, yeah, so these guys are doing this. This seems to be working quite well. Maybe we can find some space here that we can actually grow in ourselves without, as has been mentioned before, without having this big kind of arms race and directly competing with others. So yeah, for us it's been really important, and I think it will continue to be important for the foreseeable future.
Okay, there's the contrarian.
Yes, as I should kind of preface, the Qualtrics story is probably quite unique in what they managed to achieve. Content is super important. Any SaaS startup beginning is going to be looking at the whole kind of digital marketing. What are we going to do from a whole range of areas? SEO, social, email. At the core of all of that is the message, and that's the content. So it is really important. But just to maybe get that bit in. Again, maybe to also kind of preface it, content, as Connor was pointing out earlier, can deliver leads and can deliver a pipeline ultimately to your sales teams. But you need to make sure that the content being produced is supporting those sales teams, and that sales and content need to work together, particularly in the SaaS environment. Unless you've got some sort of a freemium model or people upgrade, kind of like a Dropbox. But even Dropbox are investing very heavily in salespeople as well now. So you've got to make sure that you're kind of balancing those things out. But content is definitely important. But you've got to have an edge. There's nothing worse than kind of being a me too, saying a little bit of the same or a weaker version of what your competitors are saying. So I'm a big believer in kind of quality over quantity, and making sure that what you're saying will really resonate, even if it's a small number of people, and it really moves the needle with those small number of people. That's way better than just kind of journalism style approach.
I suppose just to give the background in terms of Intercom, like content. I won't actually say content marketing because I'm not big keen on that term, but I'll get to that in a sec. But content was basically the way Intercom got attention for the first 2.5 years. There was no other sales and marketing activity. The only other thing we had was like a VIP customer support program, so like that made sure that word of mouth was really, really strong. But content played such a big role in terms of getting the message out there, in terms of just getting the name out there, the news about the product. I mean, the guys actually managed to get like new product announcements to the top of Hacker News by not writing about, oh, we've got a new product out and it does this, but actually going, hey, marketing is broken and this is why we think it's broken and that's why we invented this product. So I think good content and ballsy kind of content and content with attitude can have such a, it can just work in so many ways. And I suppose that the reason I kind of push back a little against the content marketing term is that I think people sometimes think of it too much just as demand gen and think about it as like, this is the way we're going to, feed the top of the funnel. We've had like designers who literally up sticks and moved here from other places in Europe after reading something on our blog. And like as a start, everyone will know as a startup, like hiring people and getting people to take a chance in you and believe in what you're doing is so hard. A little easier obviously now for people like Des when they're $1 billion valuation, but for the rest of us, you're constantly trying to get the best people you can. So like, I think people, just if you constantly just think about it as marketing, I think you can do it then. The other thing I'd say as well, though, is just start early, because particularly the kind of strategy we're doing, which is like evergreen content, not doing the kind of newsy stuff, which I think Connor has been successful at, but content that has a long life. It's actually it's one of the few forms of marketing that does have compounding returns. That doesn't diminish over time because people just get sick of seeing it. But it takes time to dial that up. You can't kind of diary, hey, next week I'm going to have a brain flash and I'm going to write a post called The Dribblization of Design that is going to literally deliver, hundreds of thousands of page views over the next 3 years. I mean, that kind of stuff, you can't turn it on like other forms of marketing, so start early.
Okay, thanks guys. So something I've been sort of seeing or hearing a lot from a lot of influencers and top blogs in the industry is about, I guess, the trend of content marketing and transparency and even radical transparency. So like pretty much, just opening up the book and, the whole company, the profits or, whatever. So for instance, like WordPress Curve and Buffer and Hit and Shah and Neil Patel, these guys, kind of preach that, transparency is this theme. So, is this a strategy that everyone should adopt?
No. No, I mean, I think, we're talking about this kind of view of transparency. Barometrics do it as well, which, company have a lot of time for. Buffer do it. I mean, the one thing I'd say about it is, how much value is there in knowing how much someone is being paid in Buffer who's probably based in South Dakota and is heading up their customer success department? I mean, I kind of admire their trying to do something differently, but I don't know, just putting everything out there, all your accounts, all your information, I just don't, the journalist in me goes, wow, it's great, because it's just, curiosity, kind of have and I have looked around those companies' accounts, because you're just curious, but how much value does it, for Intercom, to see, what they're being paid, what their finances are? I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's that useful. I think it's much more useful to say, I'd love to know how Buffer built up their audience and stuff, and they do share that kind of information in their blog, and I think that kind of stuff is much more useful because it's transferable and it's relevant to other companies. So I would say no.
No. I think radical transparency is a way to run a company, and there's a whole kind of mindset and there's a whole kind of philosophy around how people would like to run their company and making it transparent for their employees and their customers and doing away with kind of hierarchical structures. That's a philosophy of how you run a company. It can be extended and it can be brought to the public through your content, but it's not a content strategy. We bolt something on to get some quick views, and we'll piss off all our staff and we'll annoy all our customers, or we'll annoy, that doesn't, it's a philosophy. If it runs really, really deep all the way through, maybe that's something you want to extend. And I think maybe this goes back to great content is an extension of the personality of the company, of the brand, of the ethos of what it stands for. The Simon Sinek talk on TED, one of the more popular ones, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think if you get the content really, really nailed, if you really hit home, and you go beyond, talking about your own product and navel gazing and talking internally, which I think the Intercom blog does actually really well. You guys on the bringing in an audience and speaking to kind of a real resonant and points that really resonate. Well, that's why I was trying to cover my ass on that one. Backtrack. No, I joke. So I think that's kind of my tuppence worth on it. Radical transparency, good way to run a company if you're that way inclined or if you've got that sort of philosophy. But content is really about bringing your company and your brand and your employees and everything you do to life, that people want to be involved. People want, when they read your content, they want to be part of what you're selling, what your company is, what your brand is,
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I admire what guys like Buffer are doing. I think that stuff's definitely interesting, and I saw a great post, I think it was only last week, about how their traffic had dropped substantially, and they were really digging into that, and I found that really interesting. As a content strategy, I think it's fine. They're trying to find a way to tell a story, I guess, and to stand out a little bit. And I think that's just one way that you could tell a story. I think there's lots of other ways you can do it as well, though. It's something we look at ChartMogul is to try and step back and say, okay, how can we tell a story that's engaging and that stands out from what everyone else is doing? And for us, I think that might be related to our customers, telling stories about how our customers use our product. We have a great advantage that all of our customers are so diverse in terms of what their business looks like and how they run it. This may be something we can do there. But I think, radical transparency, like you said, it's not so much a content thing. I feel like it was maybe a little bit of an attention grab that in some ways worked in the short term. I don't know how it affects how they run their business, but I think you got to tell a story.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're probably all in agreement that creating great content is a good idea, strategically to help you grow, I guess, your unique visitors. But why is creating great content not enough? Let's start with Ed. You got the mic.
You can create great content and you can send people to your site in the hope that at some point when they need your solution, they think of your brand, right? And that's one thing I think that is still like a massive mistake with content marketing, is that you write content, you send people to your site, and then you have a sign-up button somewhere on that page when they're reading the article and they sign up. And then your content has like a conversion rate. And I know it's been talked about so much that that's not really how content works, but I think a lot of people still have that mindset. I think content's not enough because you've got to have the base of everything is having a product that works and that is compelling for people, right? If you can have the best content in the world for a product that just doesn't resonate with its target audience, and you're still not going to get a meaningful amount of signups. It just comes back to this root thing of content and content marketing in general always has to complement your product and your business. It's never a thing by itself. It's never a standalone entity.
So I think with content, what's the best way to describe this? Distribution is so important. Like content in of itself can sit in a silo and cannot be seen by the right people, or won't reach them at the right time, or won't have the right impact if you're not really careful about who you're targeting, and that they're actually engaging with it at the right time. Excuse me. So there's a laser focus on the right people, and timeliness are so important. And oftentimes really good content is often bypassed for poor quality content, which gets more exposure because it rides that timeliness, and it kind of captures the particular channel at the right time, and oftentimes kind of sneaks ahead. So I think that would be kind of pretty important considerations.
Actually, it's a good point Ed made, and it's something we very much believe in. It's like good content has to marry up with your product. Like Intercom are very much a product-driven company. So, for instance, we believe good marketing is about sending the right people the right message at the right time. And guess what? We have a product that does that, but then that's also kind of what we write about on our blog. So it's very much, you're not going to come to the blog or read any of our books and read stuff and go, wow, that's really interesting, and then use the product and go, wow, they've got this like really janky, horrible UI, and it's like, doesn't do any of the things they talked about. So I think actually, beyond the stuff like distribution and paid distribution, all that kind of good stuff that I think is like, it's pretty well documented out there. I think one thing that a lot of people miss is that really the content they produce just it isn't reflected in the rest of the company.
Okay. So if you've got great content and a terrible business, you might as well just give up. Yeah?
Well, if you've got great marketing and a terrible business generally, unless you're, well, that's what actually it's Microsoft, but yeah.
We're going to edit that bit out or not? No. They might sponsor a future event. Okay, So, in your opinion, I mean, like, I think what I hear mostly is that, you know, content marketing is a long-term game, if we call it a game, and actually because it is such a, you know, a long-term game, that most people actually give up too early, or a lot of people, maybe not most. But, you know, do you think it is only a long-term initiative until you get a sort of ROI, or is there like strategy for, you know, quicker wins? I think I saw some clues in Connor's presentation, but, you know, what are your thoughts in terms of quicker wins and content marketing, or is it just, you know, be prepared for the long haul?
Yeah, I mean, as a startup, definitely, it's it kind of goes back to that whole Paul Graham stuff of, you know, do stuff that doesn't scale. So, you know, in the early days, you have got, you know, let's face it, you do have time. So, you know, like, write those personal emails to people who will, you know, tweet your post or, you know, share your content, wherever it is. Like, I know a bunch of like influencers were very, very positive towards Intercom in the early days, purely because Des and Owen and people reached out directly, personally to these people, and then, you know, those people were happy to share their content. They were going, wow, there's this, like, you know, this company, they've got really interesting opinions, looks like they've got an interesting product, so we'll share their stuff. So I think, absolutely, if you're, you know, if you're thinking about how you're going to approach this, just, you know, get every reader, every influencer, do it one by one if necessary, and you know, because when you get to the stage we're at, you know, like when you want to start moving the needle, then you need to start thinking about much more things like, you know, paid distribution, all that kind of stuff. You can't do it at that point.
I think one of the points that I can't remember which of my panelists made earlier, that good content compounds over time. That, you know, you'll have content that was put out months, maybe years ago, that is still delivering, and that's something that, you know, is invaluable over time. The quick wins, yes, you can obviously have them, and there's loads of examples of, like, the Dollar Shave Club. They put out a video, things explode. Seems like the best quick win of all time. But if you're banking on building a business on a quick win, you're probably going to get let down. Because you know, it takes time to get the message, to get the audience, to get the channels, to get everything compounded and put together. So there's definitely cases, and you can be quite lucky and get those quick wins. One of the things, just to maybe take it back to examples, one of the things that we're doing at the moment is using our own product, using Qualtrics, and we're surveying 5,000 people across Europe, and we're getting a whole load of fresh data around attitudes to work, what people think of unemployment, entrepreneurship, a whole range of other topics across Europe, and being able to extract loads of information from that. So if you take that one piece of research, we can use it for press and PR, and we can use it for reports, which are used in kind of a whole range of different areas. We can use it as kind of insights for social. It can form the basis of different, you know, email outreach and a whole lot of things. So if you think very carefully about content, and you really, you know, find something that's really relevant and interesting for a particular audience, not for everybody, but for the audience you want to target, there are ways to find something unique and different and stand out.
Yeah, I think quick wins are interesting, right? Because you go to some social site now like inbound.org, and you see the front page, and it's all quick wins. Like, every single thing there is a quick win. People are trying to sell you quick wins. It's like 5 quick things you can do right now to increase your blog traffic by 3,000%. And people love that stuff. But I think in terms of quick wins for content, I think it's always an investment that you make. And if you skimp on the effort up front for quick wins, you're going to be left once the dust is settled in the same place that you were before. And I think in my experience and what we're doing right now is to really trying to make longer term investments in our content. I think you need to experiment. Like I said before, it's really important to not, you know, you find one thing that works and the temptation is to stamp and repeat. I think you can do small experiments as long as you can decide whether they work for you or not. That's fine. But I don't know. I just these quick win things just they don't do it for me.
It's quick win industry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You just gave me an idea for another quick win. Maybe I could write tomorrow. How attending SaaS meetups improves your SaaS life by 1,000%. Last question from me before we throw it open to the audience, and we'll look for some short answers here. Nothing wrong with long answers, but let's mix it up. What are your content marketing hints and tips? And let's look for like 3 tips each. John.
3 tips. I think be clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, for instance, like people ask us, everyone's really curious about the traffic. Traffic doesn't matter. We don't sell ads. We sell software. So, like an engaged reader is far more important to us than like 1 million page views. So be very clear about that. Like what matters. Just write really something different and authentic and that you care about. There's just so much crap out there where people are just writing about themselves. And people aren't going to come to your blog to read about you as a company. They're going to come to the blog to read something that's going to help them do their job better or make their life better or improve their sex life or whatever it might be. But, they're not interested
SaaS life, yeah.
Yeah, your SaaS life. They're not interested in you. And just have an opinion. Again, that's the kind of stuff people want to come and read.
Maybe just to reiterate that last point, like over time with content, you're building an audience. Like it's very easy to kind of scam the figures. Like you could write posts about Justin Bieber and you could absolutely blow your numbers up tomorrow, but it's of no relevance, and that's kind of an extreme example. But you're building a relationship with people over a period of time that are willing to give up their time and their attention to come and engage with you on a regular basis, and that's where it becomes powerful. The one-offs rarely convert as well as that regular readership of people that are engaged. Really ask yourself what you're trying to achieve. I've just seen a lot of people rush into content marketing because it's perceived as being kind of low barrier to entry. It's kind of cheap. Anybody can do it. And oftentimes companies just don't have a clear goal at the end. Like, what are we doing? If we're just producing leads, many times the leads can be poor quality because you haven't really thought it through. Or if we're just working on a particular area, there can be holes in it. So think about how it fits in the overall strategy. Just as a kind of an overview is something that I think is pretty important. Personality. Personality is really important to content. And that means different things to different companies. It doesn't mean, Party Allen is Hawaiian shirt or anything like that. Personality can be lots of different things. But find that thing that people are really associate with and want to be part of.
Yep. From a product perspective, I like to think of my content as a product as well, because I think it is, and I think it has an experience, and it leaves either a negative or a positive impression on the person that consumes it. I think if you think of it that way, and focus on giving people the best experience when they're consuming your content, which means don't try to distract them with stuff while they're reading. Just give them the best experience, and if your content's good quality, they'll think of you when they're looking for a solution. And then I think the only other thing is sometimes it's good to just shut yourself away from all the other noise, because I don't think it guides you in the right direction at all. I would just maybe shut yourself in a room and think about how you can tell a story about what you're doing, and if you do that, I think you'll end up cutting through a lot of the noise out there.
Okay, thanks guys. So now I guess this is your opportunity to ask questions to the panel. So does anyone want to kick this off? This is easy.
Hi, I'd love to know your views about paid distribution.
By paid distribution, you mean things like Outbrain and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, paying to distribute your own content.
I think it has value if you get to a stage where it gets harder to move the needle on things. I mean, it is a bit like that quick win industry, though. I think there are a lot of stuff out there that's very kind of spammy, that's very low quality. Like you're basically buying an audience. It was like yesterday, somebody retweeted something we had, and I went, oh, he's got 18,000 followers, and I checked out his bio, and it was like his business was building up Twitter followers for you, and you're just like, oh God, I thought that stuff had gone away, but it's still out there. So I certainly think there are some good stuff. We've done some experiments with Outbrain, and yeah, it will deliver a certain amount of audience, but I think you still need to build a core audience before paid distribution will really have much impact for you. That's certainly our experience of it anyway.
There's definitely a place for it, but I'd be very reluctant to say it's a kind of a long-term strategy or something that you would have as a pillar of what you're doing. For amplifying and setting something loose, and in the early days it can be very tempting to accelerate stuff, even with the likes of Twitter or LinkedIn or different things like that. I'm kind of reluctant. There's definitely, like, most of the times that I've seen it, there are wins and then it kind of plateaus. And what happens is people tend to throw more and more money into something that's plateauing and not really producing a big return, or the return that justifies the expense. So yeah, it has in certain areas there's a benefit, like targeting people with very kind of cleverly targeted remarketing ads on Twitter or on other platforms with a really laser focused message. People that have engaged with content previously, or and being able to very cleverly say, okay, if we were able to get this person back for a third or fourth time with a very succinct message, we know that's our sweet spot for converting somebody into X. You can be kind of quite sharp about that, but that's the laser focus when you're kind of going, we're just going to bid on a whole lot of really broad keywords and hope something sticks. You usually waste your money when you do that, something like that.
Yeah, we've experimented with a few things at ChartMogul, and I think we would probably only do it if we knew that we could have, like you said, a laser sharp focus. We found some success in these, in some paid campaigns on Twitter when we're, for example, targeting attendees of a conference or something like that. That's fine. I think anything else can turn into a bit of a rabbit hole that you chase, and we just don't have enough people or time to have somebody optimizing paid campaigns.
Just one last one while I think of it. One thing that can be quite useful on the content side is look at like people that retweeted all of your competitors' content and then target them with laser focused remarketing ads for very similar content. And they're the kind of people that have retweeted and engaged with something similar. So those kind of things can work, but in small bursts.
Okay. Any other questions? Nothing?
I think there can be a difficulty creating something that's known as tone or personality in your content, especially when you're trying to write it. Can you give us any insights into what tone and personality means, and what having a brand voice means in content?
Good question. Different things to different people. I suppose first of all you've got to know who your audience is, and that's often quite hard. That often takes a good bit of time and a bit of soul searching, and particularly involving people senior up in the organization, because it's really an extension of where the company is going. So you've got to really understand who you're trying to speak to, and then a lot of things kind of fall out of that. Once you're able to kind of amalgamate a series of traits into, the word persona gets overused, but amalgamate a series of traits that is common in the people you're trying to target. You start to get a clear idea of what will resonate with them. But that's kind of helps the tone of voice. But then it really helps if you have, kind of a quirky side. We have a dog in our office in the office over in the States, Barnaby, and he's head of innovation, and that's what the guys have nominated him as. But kind of quirky things like that flow through content. Bring kind of a relatively kind of relaxed, kind of fun side to some stuff which is like market research related that isn't sexy and isn't it's not keeping people awake at night.
I'd say it's interesting actually for us. Social is one area we haven't really done a huge amount on. Like we obviously use social media to promote our other content, but actually doing social media itself as a thing. But the one thing that's really resonated is when we tweet pictures or share pictures of like people from the company or stuff going on inside the company. And I think it very much speaks to that. Like people want to know what's the personality, like what's going on, what do you like really, and I think trying to get that across in your content is tough, And the problem actually we have at the moment is our content was very much led from the top. Des and Owen, co-founders, like drove a lot of the content at the start. Des particularly in latter years. And then I came on, and now we've got a team of 4 people working on content, and it kind of caught up on us very quickly that we're sitting with, it was a small group, and we were very easily able to communicate and talk about like, this is the Intercom way, this is what we would say, and this is how we would speak, and now we're actually very much quickly trying to catch up and kind of create this kind of voice and tone document, and that's kind of an interesting thing to do when you're in motion and you're 180 people, because you're suddenly trying to go, well, what is the thing that brings us all together here? But I mean, it's to do it. I think there's a bunch of examples out there. If you're interested in like how to establish voice and tone, Mailchimp have done it very successfully. I mean, newspapers have been doing it for years with style guides and stuff. I mean, you literally start off with thinking about like what are the things you believe in and you stand for, and work down from there. So I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. I'll just add one thing, which I think is engaging with people who engage with your content is really important as well. So I think that can go a really long way towards giving your brand and giving your company a face. If you can just show them that there's a real person here. Half the stuff I read today, I'm not sure whether it's been written by a bot or a real person. So if you can convince them that you're real, you're going a long way to kind of win.
Anyone else? Any questions? No? Well, in that case, we have gone. Yeah.
I answer questions much better on beer.
I'm on antibiotics, so there'll be no beer for me. So, John, this question is specifically for you. How do you measure your success? Do you have to turn a certain amount of people into qualified leads, and I'm just success versus budget? I'm just curious about all that.
Well, I'm not going to say too much about sort of the internals of how our marketing operation works, but I mean, I think most companies would have a definition of like what a qualified lead is, or what like how their funnel works. But I suppose the point I was trying to make was that page views are really only important if you're selling ads, because at the end of the day, we could have, like, I could go out tomorrow and write a bunch of articles about like Apple Watch or a bunch of other things that like I know are going to get like this sort of fly-by-night traffic, not going to have any kind of real engagement, and the numbers would look great, but what's the point? Des famously made that comment about, if you want to get engagement in your product, you can just add Tetris to your calendar and you'll get great like levels of engagement, but will it do anything for your product? No. So you can always game the numbers. So I think what we look at it is just, are we building an audience that like of engaged people who think Intercom, or we know what we're talking about, we have something interesting to say, who sort of agree with our views on like support, product management, the actual jobs that our products do, and so that when they have an opportunity to buy, or they have a need to buy a product in that space, well, the first thing they're going to turn to is Intercom, and hopefully move a lot of them down the funnel a lot quicker. Anyone else?
Was that just specifically for? Maybe you have another question. Maybe this.
He's taking your voice.
Yeah.
But I know your answers.
Okay. Do you want me to? Yeah. Can you remind me what the question was? I kind of tuned out when you said it was just for.
Put a value on content, basically, and how do you measure the value of success of it?
Okay. Yeah. What does success look like? So I agree with John that like page views is a vanity metric, as are Twitter followers, or as are certain things like that, and people can kind of get obsessed with those things. As I mentioned at the start, we're quite a transparent company, and one of the things that I ultimately own a number for pipeline created from all of the marketing activity that we engage in. So really that's where the book stops and ends. Content is an important component of that. It's not the only part. it tends to be the glue between many different areas, which is I suppose maybe amplifies its importance. But yeah, ultimately, I own a certain amount of pipeline created each quarter, and content is a part of that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a hard thing to solve, right? How do you measure how successful your content is, especially on a granular level? We have ways of tracking people and where their first touch point is, and whether they come back for something else, and whether they eventually sign up with us. But to be honest, I try not to focus on that stuff because I think it can distract you, and I'm not sure how accurate it can be at telling you what to focus on. So I just try and write good content and hope that it resonates with people.
Okay, I think on that note, there's some cold beers with our names on. And I just want to, before that, obviously say thank you to all of our speakers, Connor, Liam, Neve, who I don't think is here anymore, John, Ed, and Des. And also thanks to the sponsors, Tribal VC, and of course Intercom for hosting the event. So yeah, let's have some beers, even though it's a school night, and eat some cold pizza. All right, thank you.